Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us during this lunchtime talk. This talk is our first of a series, and as we call it the News Impact Talk, this will alternate with our Generations Talk that will happen, for example, in next month, December, there will be a Generations Talk, and today, the News Impact Talk will talk about the fighting the doldrums, addressing remote work and wellness. Our host today is Serene Goh. She's a management committee member of Singapore Press Club and founder and director of Brango. And our panelists, let me introduce them to you. Joyce Koh is the bureau chief of Bloomberg Singapore. Bernard Lim, you'll be very familiar with him as like a celebrity to us in Singapore. Program director, KISS 92 and 1 FM 91.3 SPH Radio. Zakir Hussain, who's also our vice president of Singapore Press Club, and he's the Singapore editor, the Straits Times SPH. Christelle Goh, the youngest of them all, founder of Grow PR, and she volunteers at social enterprise Clay Wahi. I shall hand this session over to Serene Goh to start the discussion.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us this lunch hour. It's been great seeing everybody just come forward and sign up for this, because obviously it's a topic that all of us have had to counter, especially in an industry as stressful as the media. So I just wanted to start off but with a quick warm-up, and who better to do this but Bernard. Maybe you want to share a bit about how your workday was like before this whole pandemic and how things are going now.
Workday before pandemic, obviously it was usual. We just come in, we did be the office, we'd be in the office early, and then we have meetings in the office, etc., etc. And of course, we're all kind of taken aback when the circuit breaker was announced. This was as far back as like April 2020, I think. And we all kind of suddenly had to work from home, or parts of the team have to work from home. I remember at that time I was in Money FM, and I was reading the news from my bedroom. I remember we lasted for about a month plus and all that. So trying to make the work environment in my bedroom suitable to be reading the news. So it was quite funny. I just shared with friends how we were all kind of reading the news with, the air condition is on. You want to make sure there's no humming sound and all that. So we actually put a winter coat over your head and just to cover yourself, so it's a kind of insulate yourself so the mic doesn't pick up any humming sound along the way. So this was funny experiences. We had to adjust at that time to kind of work from home, literally broadcast from home. So yeah, I think we're more adapted right now. So it's been almost 2 years. So I think we know how to function right now.
So are you still using your winter coat for something? You're obviously not traveling.
I don't use a winter coat anymore because I don't read the news from my bedroom anymore. So now obviously I'm doing a little bit more things. So I come in occasionally, maybe 1 week about 2 times and all that. And I come into the office, but most of the times I'll be doing meetings from home, on Google Meet, via Zoom, via Team, everything. So it's all done remotely.
Yeah. Okay. And now let me check in with Joyce. How has life changed at the Wires, before and
a lot. a lot. I mean, Singapore, the Singapore newsroom is actually one of the biggest for Bloomberg in Asia Pacific. So we have about 90 journalists sitting in Singapore. Very, very diverse newsroom with people from all over. And the office is such a big part of our culture. I mean, the Bloomberg Pantry, as you guys might have heard about, I mean, it's where we used to gather.
It's famous.
Yeah, I know we'll have curry puffs on Wednesdays for mornings. I mean, there's always like discussions what the pantry is going to offer us and in terms of food and just a huge collaborative environment in the newsroom. So I think it was quite a big shock for everybody when we all had to move online. Just people who've moved to Singapore, people who've relocated, locals especially, and all just figuring out this new norm of working. I think the company tried to help. I mean, we were given a stipend to like make sure everything is in order, like make sure your IT is okay, your computer setup is very important because there's nothing worse than dealing with an IT problem in the Wires when you're like trying to send a headline. And then, yeah, there's like internet connection problems, which is the worst. So I think we tried to put that all in place so that people, at least if they're working from home, have a good setup.
Do you all have like IT frontline worker awareness day?
Yeah, we should celebrate these guys because they really save us a lot of tears. But we have a bureau chat group like on WhatsApp, and like people are just like, oh my god, like is the internet down, or like why am I not able to get connection? And then somebody will pick it up very quickly and reach out for help, or reach out to help us. So
that's really sweet. I think there's an element of kindness that has come out, and a little bit more forgiving in an industry that is usually quite fast-paced and task-oriented, which I'm quite happy to see. I think we didn't used to pause and take time to actually consider people's feelings and what is this thing called feelings, right? Because we are media professionals and we are deadline driven. So I'd like to check in with Crystal now and Zakia. I think that we mentioned, we had this discussion earlier on where you had to start putting the welfare of individuals before sorting out the stories. Or when did this realization hit you, and how are you progressing with that now? Or you're on mute, I think. Zach, I think you're on mute. No, can't hear you now. But okay, let Zach figure that one out, and then I'll move to Crystal first. Crystal, how have things changed? You know, like, is it harder to get in touch with journalists, or are they still as elusive, easier? How has that changed for you?
Yeah, so I think definitely in a way, because like the only way seems to be to reach like the editors and journalists via email. So it is a little bit challenging, but at the same time it makes you try to figure out how to be a bit more concise and deliberate in the way that you communicate and follow up, right? So like to know when to give up. I think that's what we all are learning to do.
And how has that changed the level of efficiency you've had with editors and journalists?
I think definitely now, whether it's with the media, or whether it's with clients or various partners, being able to have many meetings in a day, it changes like how it was like before, right? Where you have to travel from one location to another location. And then let's say your meeting is only like maybe you just needed 10 minutes to talk, and then you would stay on for even longer just to make the time worth, since you travel all the way down, and the person has to host you, things like that. So I think definitely it's a lot more efficient. Yeah.
And I think there's been a lot of with all these changes in the way that people interact. Back to Zakia, I'm going to test again to see if he's okay.
Yep.
How are you, Zach? Can
you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Yeah, okay, it's all good now. Yeah, maybe you can share a bit about at which point you realized that you had to put the welfare of people first, and how that's going now.
Yeah, no, I think that realization came late last year, when we realized, gosh, it's been 6 months since, we've had the pandemic, and while, we were back in the office. In fact, I think late last year was a lot better than this time now, because we could really casually go back into the office last year. And I think we were already back to dining in 5, I think, almost. Yeah, so I think that allowed us to gather, right? Yeah, and have meals in the office and socialize at work, which I think is
have meals in the office is something that, okay, I'm going to expose something about the Straits Times newsroom culture. They have a corner called The Usual Place, which is kind of like a watering hole for journalists throughout the day, and they sort of cluster around this area, and they share mooncakes and everything in between. Mooncakes, any kind of festival related goodies and snacks, and that was a key part of the socialization and motivation, actually. So Zach, without that, how do you keep your crew motivated? Journalists need food, man.
Yeah. So it's a little tough, I think. Some of us try and gather. Can you hear me now? Yeah. Some of us, sorry, keep checking. Some of us, I think, some of us just try and gather outside the office, when we can. Although with kind of the capped at 2. That's been a bit tough. But we try and do more face-to-face Zoom calls or meetings.
Yeah. And Bernard, how do you keep your team motivated? So you had more responsibilities over this season.
I mean, I think the radio jobs are obviously a little bit more sociable. They're more outgoing and they like to hang out. And whether it's a happy hour drink or popping into each other's workspace and then have a conversation. So that was initially a bit of a trouble trying to adjust to that. And we kind of also realized that it's like 2 and then 5, and then it's so hard. The kind of people we have to keep on reminding everybody that is not right. So that was one of the things. So we have group chats. I have about 2, 3, or 4, 5 group chats with the teams that I work with. So we constantly check in every morning whenever there are big days meaning like a big guest coming into studio or a big interviews or something like that, a big show that's coming up. I will always check in with them. And I think that's something that to keep everybody sane, that we're all still in this as a team. Initially, it was difficult for people coming up to say that, oh, I don't feel belong, I don't feel as passionate anymore, etc., etc. But thank goodness, I mean, we had our own way to do it. I mean, personally, I do like to also catch up with people one-to-one, have a coffee somewhere, talk about work, and then by sharing some confidential things. But I cannot do that nowadays. So all the meetings are held online, and obviously sometimes when it's still, you can't feel the vibe from certain people when you're having a group meeting like this. Like a 15, 20 people, you can't feel the real vibes, So those are some of the things that I struggle with myself.
So I think Joyce, maybe you want to talk a little bit about how some of the people in your office became less motivated, or not less motivated, but they were faced with the challenge of not having seen some of their family and friends who are overseas, right? Because a lot of them are international folks that you work with. Maybe you want to share about how you keep their spirits up?
Yeah, I mean, so Singapore acts as a regional hub for the rest of the region. That's why it's pretty international. A lot of people come here and cover Singapore, the region, and I would categorize, I don't know, my role, or at least tenureship as bureau chief, in 2 halves. Like one half was like, oh, Singapore's so vibrant and everybody want to come here, and then the next half was COVID, where it's like, oh my gosh, like we can't even travel out. So it was hard. I think it helped to proactively check in with people. So your senses, your radar has to be on high alert every time on the people. You sense people are under distress or this that they need to talk about things. So it's a lot of proactively reaching out. It's also a lot about creating a sense of normality even in these abnormal times. So still pressing on with these virtual bureau meetings that we have, still having these weekly newsroom awards that we give out. I wanted to do away with that because it's really time consuming to put together all the stories. But then my boss was like, I think it's important to keep up the tradition and the normality of things, right? That that we still have these things going on. On the office front, I think the office was also very proactive in organizing talks that touched on all these relevant topics that people were thinking about. So we had talks like how to deal with family separation, dealing with loss from afar. Some of people, people passed away while they were away. They couldn't travel to the funerals, couldn't travel to the wake. So it's really, really hard. Homeschooling for parents, singles also, that's the other end of the spectrum, singles dealing with loneliness. So I mean, these talks were really to let people have a sense of community, that they're not alone, that we're trying to create this forum where people can at least share.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point that you made. Like, singles felt alone, and then people who had, as I like to call it, hell-based learning, felt like it was too much. It was just too much. I need alone time. So it's an interesting mix, and I think these are very interesting personal insights that you're sharing from where you sit. I'm just curious. Now that all these VTLs are open, how are you arranging leave times for people to go home?
Yeah, because now December, nobody's around, right?
Go shop.
I mean, the team manages that resources, and obviously we do. we do as much as we can, try to be understanding of people's situation, especially if they haven't seen their families for such a long time. So we're working very closely with our HR people, the teams, the managers, to make that happen.
Well, is there a governing philosophy behind how your HR makes decisions? Like it's we're gonna say, okay, this approach, we're gonna take a human first approach where let's stick with this, or what is there a specific style that you are going about making
as much as we can, we try to be understanding within that whole framework of government rules, and MOM have all these rules about re-employment, reapplying for the entry pass and things like that. So first and foremost, I think it's to really put out the information that people need out there, that look, if you want to travel, we're not stopping you, but then these are all the information and these are all the risks or concerns that you need to take into account if you when you think about it. And then we'll try to help you with some of these processes if we need to.
Yeah, I think that's incredible. I think employers who are doing that now are really being very attractive to media professionals who are looking for employment, looking for that special level of I guess support from the company that they work for, so that they can do a very highly pressurized job in a safe space. You know what I mean? They know that someone has their back. But at this point, I'm going to go to Crystal. When you're sort of more of an entrepreneurial setup in nature, what kind of activities do you engage with to stay connected to the community? And Crystal?
Okay, so within the team, we try to do regular team lunches monthly, and then this is remote, which is quite funny. But I think we are always trying to find different activities. So there are various drawing games that we can do, and really talking about some of the plans, and I think just having time to be able to have casual conversations that is not so task oriented is helpful. It helps you take the stress away from forever having to rush for something, but you can just talk about what you're eating, who's bothering you, stuff like that. I think that's something that we do.
And also, you became a new mommy halfway through all of this tamasha. So how did that work out for you?
So I was telling you, sorry, that I think that especially for this period, it is very helpful for new parents. Because the first few years are where you really need to spend a lot of time with your kid. They cling to you this human piece of meat that clings to you 24/7, right? So I think it's really helpful, the fact that I can be home, I can be doing meetings, and then I can step outside, and then that human piece of meat will be screaming around. I think it's actually quite positive if you take it optimistically, that we have this time that we can spend with our loved ones. Yeah.
And on top of that, you still were working with Hua and coming up with these activities for the group, right? Which you started the group Hua, right? And now you still create these activities for folks with dementia, right? So, and they are caregivers. How did that play into everything else?
I think with the nursing homes, is very, very difficult because of the restrictions, that you're not even allowed to have any visitors at all, and activities are cut down. If you think about it, there's no volunteering going on, which because what we do is that we offer localized card games that caregivers, that volunteers can use to engage seniors. And during the pandemic, I think we can see that really there's been a drop in activity. There's no corporate volunteers, there's no student volunteers going in, so it's very difficult. But within the center itself, some of these hospitals or even nursing homes do still try to find ways, I guess, to engage them. Yeah.
And Bernard also started getting involved in the community through Vintage Radio. So why did you choose that CCA?
Actually, that was one of the earlier projects that a group of us, some of us have been in radio for a long time. So, namely, people like Mark Richmond, Aloysius Tan, we're all friends. So basically, one day we're playing golf, and we just said like do something meaningful because we were kind of affected by all the messages that how some of our senior citizens are not aware of things that they're not supposed to go out, they're supposed to wear masks, etc., etc. And then also the fact that they also feel very lonely. They also feel very lonely, like the children not able to visit them, so they're all kind of like left on their own. So we came up with quite a noble idea to do something to cater to the elderly. So I think Vintage Radio was an idea that was born there. So basically, to put it simply, it's almost like internet radio. It's streamed and it's streamed live and the music. So it's basically all the slightly older stuff, as the name suggests, vintage radio. So it's older repertoire of music from the 60s, 50s, etc. And then we also line up personalities who are more to that era of audience. So we have a Brian Richmond to man the Chinese programs, and we have the Guo Xianhua, who is a very popular Chinese DJ from the past, doing the Chinese program, and then Bala doing the Indian programs, and Rahima Rahim doing the Malay shows. So this is just a community project that is very well obviously looked after, very well put together, and thanks to a few funders who kind of supported the project, and it's been running for months now, almost a year already.
So how did you personally feel getting involved in something outside of work?
Well, I was also careful, to be honest. I mean, this is obviously not part of the work that I do every day, but it's to me it was a community project, and I helped as much as I could, in the sense that from the back when I advise on the systems of the songs, how the songs are being scheduled, etc. I was helping in terms of the production of the station liners, jingles, and all that. And yeah, I've done my part to kind of help to reach out to this particular segment of the audience, which right now, to be honest, they don't have something to turn to be honest. They don't have anything. So
I think it's a lovely initiative, and I think it's one of those things that when I think it it shows how resilient people can be if they're sort of facing their own challenges, to sort of get up and look at the needs of people who have it even worse, right? I think that's really admirable. Okay, and I want to go back at this point to Zach before I open the Q&A side of things. Zach, you mentioned in an earlier conversation that you had to become more flexible in working within newsroom deadlines and balancing and managing all these different things. How has that changed you as a manager, as a supervisor?
I think it made us realize that I think COVID-19's made many of us realize that I think well-being should be a key priority. And I mean, for instance, we've got colleagues who've not been able to who've been separated from their partners or loved ones for nearly 2 months because of the borders closing. And we've got individuals who can't, especially for many of our younger colleagues, who may live alone or who may not have as much space to move about. So I think we try and work around those constraints, especially with scheduling. So for instance, we've got colleagues who request to be rostered for late shifts because they were involved with caregiving duties, earlier in the day. And I think especially when, say, a family member comes down with COVID, or their kids have to be stuck at home all of a sudden because of, someone else in preschool gets COVID, and the health risk warning applies to everyone. They need to adjust their schedules. So I think flexibility and compassion, I think, become more important. And if that means, we can't chase a story, or we can't do something, or we just have to drop something, then so be it. I think staff well-being is more significant than I guess KPIs in this instance. And I think it's a tough call, but I think I guess a lot of supervisors need to be empowered to make these decisions on the fly.
Yeah, I think if I might just jump in, sorry, Serene, if I might just jump in. Yeah, because he kind of, what Zach said really kind of spoke to me also. I mean, as a newsroom manager, we deal with such a huge flow of stories every day crossing our screens and pictures and what have you not. And I think it's really, you have to be super mindful of while at the same time getting the work done, the stories out, but also like, mindful of people's workload and what they're dealing with. Yeah, so it's important. I think at Bloomberg we try to have a laser focus on is the story what our audience needs, what our clients will read about. Do we really need that story? Is it really necessary to update the story as another time with just an extra quote? Does it add to it? So yeah, these are all the considerations we think about when we try to deal with also people's
okay. On that note, we have some really interesting questions on the chat. So I want to direct one to you, Joyce. So it's from Sunny Wee. Do you get the sense that work from home makes people a bit more lethargic? Yeah, a little bit more lethargic and not as energized as they used to be in terms of getting out there to get the news.
Definitely poses challenges for journalists who are, I guess, by nature maybe a bit more extroverted. Though I think there are some people, I mean, it's a variety, like I said, it's a very diverse newsrooms. We have people who are strategists, who likes the introversion, who likes the time and space at home to just think about ideas and think about stories. So it affects people in many different ways. I mean, for sure, it affects it when we can't go out to meet people, meet sources, meet contacts. And so every time when there's a window where we could do it, where the COVID restrictions allow it to, more than groups of 2, groups of 5, we try to seize that window to meet people. But yeah, I mean, it's just keeping the motivation is one of the key things.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things that the buzz of the newsroom, right? We always talk about having that buzz around you and sort of like, just being energized by other people being, busy and you're not working on something alone. So Zach, did you find that you had a very, very lethargic sort of people who were sort of languishing and like, very sian? How did you deal with that?
I think, I did encounter some of that. And I think sometimes it's important in these instances to, I think, just engage some of our colleagues outside work or informally. I think try and find ways. And, I think there's some who by nature or by personality are more outgoing. So we try and consciously set them, tasks or projects or assignments that I guess get them energized a bit more. And I think we found that with, some of the reporting on migrant worker dorms, some of the reporting, even on how domestic workers were coping with the pandemic, and even amid, safe distancing restrictions and on the number of guests and so on. I mean, we've got colleagues who would try and work around some of the rules, can't go speak to someone at home because he's had more than, and he's very concerned that, if he gets more than 2 visitors a day, they might catch him and jail him and everything. So I'm like, okay, just sit down in the void deck, and because I think reporters do want to get out there and get the news.
And then and this is a question from Yifu to everybody, and I think anybody on the panel can just jump in. Do you see hybrid working being the approach in the media industry, even if the safe management measures are lifted? If so, would there be new media channels or approaches to consider, especially with your young reporters who are telling you, perhaps, if you can't let me work from home, I don't want to work here anymore. So, got such things or not? Joyce, Zach, Bernard, and even Crystal, actually. Do you have any demand? Yeah, Bernard, how? If I cannot work from home, I don't want to work.
I think a hybrid approach for the new working style is definitely not a surprise. It's a norm now already. I mean, many of us, I'm sure, will be kind of dragging our feet a little bit if we have to go back to office Mondays to Fridays. Let's say from next week, all of us here, right? So I think we're all kind of settled in our kind of our zone right now. So, but going forward, I think this hybrid working model is definitely is here to stay. And let's specifically take the radio industry, for instance. Many of you don't know the morning shows right now on KISS or 1FM 91.3. Not the entire team is in the studio every morning. Right? We already split our shifts already, split our teams already. So some of them are at home, some of them are here. So that is in case there's anything that happens, the team is the other half of the team is clear to continue to function the next day. Otherwise we'll not be able to function. So that is already a norm to all of us right now. And if you ask me, is it going to be a big problem? Because these days technology also allows us to do that. We can kind of broadcast from home with a microphone, with a laptop like this, and whether it's Google Hangout, Meet, or whatever, we're good to go. And that's really what it is. And for the radio business, even for print as well, I think podcast is another platform that many people are talking about as well. It is an in thing now. So podcast, you can do it very much remotely anywhere you are. So it is an in thing to go. And obviously, we should be fitting into making everybody who works in the team to be very comfortable in the new environment. And I will vote for that for sure.
Maybe I can jump in
Yeah,
here.
Crystal, you have some more of a challenge, more corporate.
Yeah, so I think as a business owner, I've been hearing stories of people resigning when asked to go to the office. So I think that people are so used to the way that things are, right? That there has been some of these things that have been happening.
Oh my gosh. So I mean, because I trust everything that I read on the internet, right? I would like to think that some of this is like exaggerated. Like, how badly do people want to work in hybrid models?
I think, I don't know, I feel people appreciate that flexibility that we have right now to work from home. I mean, right now, for us, the default is work from home. So in that sense, it's harder to get back to the office. I don't know, I think at Bloomberg, we do still believe that the office provides a collaborative culture. It is a good environment for people to get together. But we'll look at it as and when we are bounded by the rules of the Singapore government as of now. But we'll see as that develops.
Yeah, and Joyce, I have a question here from Rachel Lam. I noticed more internal communication roles advertised in the corporate world since COVID-19. I wonder if companies are adding these roles due to the pandemic, example, to ease their work from home stress or contribute to staff well-being, to coordinate online staff events, etc. In the past, pre-COVID-19, external communications was more the typical role.
Actually, it's not that I know of. I mean, in Bloomberg itself, we do have different groups. And I mean, mental health is a big priority for the company. So we have groups like D&I groups. We have the office committee that are always they're coming up with like new ideas, new initiatives, new outreaches. So it's across. I see it across the company rather than within the newsroom itself. I mean, within the newsroom, me, myself, and the people who help me, we do try to communicate more. Learn that over communication sometimes might be better, so that people get the information that they need. But
and Crystal, I mean, is that observation valid? I mean, is it true that people are doing more internal comms?
I think what I've been hearing is that a lot of people are trying to bring the comms function within the company rather than work with agencies. I guess there are different arrangements, right? But yeah, and I guess different industries also have different communications needs.
Okay, let me pause you there. Okay, I as a journalist, I think communications, definitely my first instinct is to think external, right? I create a story for broadcast for the wider audience. So internal communications, ironically, in various different news organizations I've been in over the years, have often done very badly at internal communications. They're very good at external communications, but oftentimes you find that, sometimes I find myself in conversations where I'm saying, I can't believe we're paid professionals, because I mean, we're actually not doing so well speaking to each other. So what's the most critical part of this discussion? Are we good? Are we getting better? And is it important for us to have an internal way of collaboration, and communication?
I think that increasingly with working remotely, with having colleagues not based in Singapore, based all over the world, then you realize how much things get lost in translation when you communicate via WhatsApp, right? So it makes you realize how much you really need to over communicate, like Joyce mentioned.
Yeah. Okay. Bhagya has a question for Joyce. And that is Bloomberg letting its expat staffers work away from SG out of their hometowns, for instance, for extended periods?
So this is more of a HR question. I think from what I've seen, we encourage people to first and foremost use their leave, their T days, their leave time to, if they plan to travel. Because I think if you work from home, work from the country you're supposed to work in for an extended period of time, that brings into other, considerations like taxation, things like that. So we do try to support as and when we can. But some of these are one-on-one conversations that we do pick up.
Okay. How about Bernard? Do you have, maybe for DJ, can you do remote reporting from, let's say, if you wanted to do now that VTLs are open and for lifestyle purposes, could you do a travel story?
Well, we can. In fact, we're planning right now. In fact, on 1FM Angel, one of the three hosts on the show is traveling to Australia, to New South Wales, to meet her in-laws, because she hasn't seen them for years as well. So as she was planning that, we kind of decided to make this into a bit of a travel experience as well, because I'm sure a lot of our listeners will be eager to know what are the issues crossing immigration, etc., where the testings and all that. So she's going to go through all that in this trip that we're still planning for her, working with Tourism New South Wales. So she'll be sharing her experiences throughout the whole trip. So she goes on the 20th of November to, I think, early December. So yeah, it's possible, because these days, like I said, technology makes it so easy. You can just hook up the laptop with a good camera, and then, like most of us right now, and you're on already. You can go on air quite simply. You can send back to the studio. So yeah, it's possible.
And obviously, it's a lot of logistical planning, and you have to be very, very good at making sure you cover all your bases, because you want to arrive at an airport or transit and then say, oh, actually you missed a step, right? So
Okay.
who is the person that is most organized and doing this? There's always one person in the office that's extremely good at this and everyone else is not. So who is this person? And how are you treating them?
No, for you, that's a good point. Good point. Obviously, when you go outstation, coordination, these are all very important, and timing, etc., etc. So we are working with the land team over there, so that they can make sure that she'll get to a certain place at a certain time, and she get the chance to experience certain things at a certain time. Obviously, it will not be 100% live, because the show is in the early morning show. So in the sense that some will be a bit of a delayed response and reaction from her, but will be communicated via the morning show for that period of time. So, but she will be broadcasting from Sydney. She'll be physically in Sydney, so you can catch on.
That's so cool. Is there an added pressure to do video since you're there? Did anyone come up to you and say, hey, since you are there, can't you do a bit of video as well?
I mean, these days,
Media loading.
yeah, but media is so much it's so converged right now. So we're all really different platforms. I think in the morning shows, quite often they also have an element of their of the Facebook Live element as well. So in the studios, they are talking like us, and then they play a song, and then listeners hear the song on air, but then they're talking to the audience on Facebook, so there are the different folds that we have branched out to. We have to reinvent ourselves as well, otherwise you can't stay relevant. It's challenging.
I think the whole work culture discussion has shifted in so many ways. Just the office culture, the pantry culture, getting together and having these iteration meetings, right? Which sometimes are not just iteration, they include just being silly and being humorous and kind of that's where the creativity is sparked. So I think there's a discussion on the chat, and I think Joyce, you can take this one. Community managers, culture managers, it's really about internal comms and rebranded. How do you think that's working on? I mean, how important do you think that is to the changing work culture in media? Oh, you're on mute, Joyce. Sorry.
Sorry. Just to clarify the question, is it more on changing the culture internally?
No, it's how important do you think internal comms is to the changing work culture?
Oh, it's really important, especially when we are all working remotely, right? And just by ourselves in our rooms. And so it's important to be up to date, up to breast with all the changing information. Like say if the government announces like work from home to default, what does it mean, right?
What does that mean?
Yeah. So it means that we can only come into the office if we have a very valid business reason and we can't work from home. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So how do you feel about that definition as a boss?
Which definition, sorry?
The definition of like you can only come into the office if you have a valid reason.
I mean, we just have to toe what the government says, right? I mean, as a MNC, we are also very mindful about complying with the rules. So I mean, if it's work from home as a default, most of us are at home.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And how about keeping tabs on people if they're working or not? I mean, productivity.
Yeah, that is. So like I mentioned, outreach. I mean, I would encourage people if they are feeling frustrated with processes of work to actually really approach your managers. Because I mean, for us also, we can't see people are depressed or they're not happy or whatever. So I mean, like coming up with suggestions I thought was very helpful. Like if suggestions on work processes or suggestions on things that can be done better in the newsroom. I think clear directions on what we want to focus on, write about. I think these are helpful for people in the newsroom to know what's the agenda, what's the focus, whether we should be chasing something, looking at something or not. Yeah, I think
I think those are all very valid points. I just want to be mindful of time, so I want to go back to Zach for a while. Like you were talking. I think you run one of the toughest jobs, right? Like it's the news, and so it doesn't stop for anyone. But would you like to share if you have any tips on how you're tackling the blurring of work and home boundaries while you're on work from home? Or is this a lost cause, says Bhagya?
I think it's really tough, and I think to be fair, I think it just needs to be tailored for everyone. You see, we've got members of the team who, if they're chasing a particular story, no matter what time, even if they're on leave or off or doing stuff, they will leap at the chance for a scoop or a development in the story. Give an example: the Hin Leong saga and OK Lim's court cases. Some of the reporters on some of these stories will work throughout, and I think that the approach to that is to be completely flexible and rescheduling. Look, fine. So if you work on this on your off day and the next day you're scheduled to work, we'll just take you off work. And especially if they're very senior, we leave it to them to manage their time. Rather than say you clock in at this time and you clock out at that time, and once you're off, you're off. And some of our very seasoned reporters actually love operating on this kind of schedule. And they just structure their day and work around it, because I mean, meeting an important source or contact on an off day, is that work? Is that leisure? I think the lines are blurred, and I think it's very hard to kind of do a clear demarcation.
Do you think we're going to get back to the hustle and bustle of before?
I think we are. I think we will.
Do you want to?
Oh yeah,
yes.
of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah. I mean, I think, yeah, but I think it's the newsroom post-COVID would have changed. I mean, I think safe distancing and spreading out and not having everyone in at the same time is likely to be there. But I think you'll get some of these adrenaline rush. I mean, I think if there's a major disaster or an accident, or like during the election last year, many of us did come back to the newsroom to catch up on these things. But I just wanted to add a bit more about blurring of homework boundaries. I think some of our younger colleagues, especially millennials, tend to be quite particular about their off time and sacred space. And I think especially if they're on roster or breaking news shifts, I think we really avoid touching them on their off day or disturbing them. And if it's their off day, if it's unless it's super urgent.
I want to be millennial. I want to be. I mean, like that boundary was not there when I was growing up.
Yeah. No, but I think increasingly we have to, because if not, we see people leave after 2 or 3 years, and this work-life balance is a key reason in the exit interviews, or and I think many people, especially if they are starting a family or have very young families, cite it as a reason why they leave after 5 or 6 years, and either move to PR or move to a job with slightly more flexible, slightly more fixed hours. But I have to add, on the other hand, I think this hybrid work has made some of our colleagues who maybe have caregiving duties, whether of aging parents or very young kids, actually reconsider and think, actually, journalism is one of the few professions where I can work, because I can structure my work hours around my other responsibilities in a day. So especially if, say, they're working on features or they're working largely on their own stories, and their optimum working hour is 9 p.m. to 3 a.m. when the kids are asleep, so be it.
Okay, I think these are such great topics. I hope we have another one where we actually do a bit more kumbaya, maybe in person. I hope one day soon, right? And definitely there needs to be a top area where we can all graze and just like media professionals like to do, just a top absolute rot, right? And then so that's where the ideas come from. So thank you very, very much for sharing your lunch hour with us. I don't think that I got time to get to Junie's question, which I think maybe you all can follow up on later, and everyone can see in the chat. Happy to sync up with you, Bagya, after this, or anytime you're free. But I just wanted to be mindful of the time. So for those of you who have to step off the chat, you might need to go. Just this is a good stopping point. But if you have any direct questions for the panelists that you think you want to follow up on, please direct them to Janet, and she can, funnel them to the right panelists for further discussion if you want to follow up with them. Okay, thank you again for spending your lunch hour with us. As you can hear, my mom is starting to cook already, so I need to hop on soon as well. Never give face. So okay. Any last remarks from Janet before we wrap? Thank you.
Well, thank you, everyone. Yeah, thank you, everyone, for attending this session. I hope you got some takeaways for this session. And if you have missed some of the issues being spoken about, I've recorded this session, so I will put it up on our website, which you can go in and review it again, the recording. So thank you very much for joining us. We will have another session in January, and the January session will be very interesting. It's related to HR issues, in the media industry. So if you would like to join us, please watch out for more details on our website. And thank you so much. Any other questions? Last not least, goodbye.
Bye-bye, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your questions. Thank you.